I'm Jerry Byrne, Irish Radio it is now. Since lockdown and the advent of COVID and all the rest of it, I've been speaking to the great and the good of the creative industries of music and writing and the community, etc. Now, I've got a gentleman now, a native of County Cavan, an award-winning social innovator, campaigner, best-selling author and speaker. I'm delighted to say hello to Ruairi McKiernan. Ruairi, how are you?
I'm going great, Jerry. Thanks for having me on.
A real pleasure as always. Ruairi, listen, you originally come from Cooteal in County Cavan, but you've ended up in Lahinch on the west coast of County Clare.
Yeah, that's a long story, Jerry, and I suppose it's a story that took me from Cooteal to Scotland, where I went to university, and then ended up in San Francisco working for a newspaper. And then I worked for a few different companies, ended up in Australia and New Zealand, then back into Ireland, worked in Donegal for a couple of years, and then I ended up in Canada for a year, and then back to Donegal, and then ended up in Galway for a few years, and then met my wife in Galway, and then we moved to Dublin. And so we were in Dublin for, I think, 8 years, and really, I suppose there was maybe 2 or 3 ingredients as to why we left. One of them was the price of rent was going up so high that it, like many cities in the world, becoming unviable to build a life there. And secondly, I was feeling a real deficit of community in the particular area we're living in, and maybe that was linked to renting as well, I don't know, but I would, growing up in a small town, I would value that small town sensibility, and looking out for each other and all that. So I suppose it was just also time for a change in our life, and my wife had family links to Clare, and we just kind of rolled the dice, really. I was always up for a bit of a change and an adventure, so we moved here 2 years ago, and haven't regretted it. It's a great part of the world. The weather can be a bit challenging now, I have to say, but it's a beautiful place, stunningly beautiful place, and it's so rich in community and nature. It's a great place to be.
Indeed. Wow, you've certainly been around, no question about that. I mean, you've been quite literally all over the place, not alone in Ireland, but abroad. Certainly, it's broadened the mind. Now, listen, you've had great success with a book called Hitching for Hope: A Journey into the Heart and Soul of Ireland. Now, the interesting thing about this book is it was actually published in March by US publishers Chelsea Green. Now, March was just the start of lockdown. You probably couldn't have picked a worse time for the launch of a book.
Yeah, well spotted, Jerry. So I actually spent several years writing this book. It was a huge challenge for me, sitting down and having the discipline and the focus to finish a book and then edit a book. And it was my first time in the rodeo, so to speak. And then when it did get published, it was launched head first into the lockdown in Ireland when the bookshops all closed. And I had a tour planned. I was going to 8 different venues all around Ireland. I was going to do a speaking tour and a launch tour, and immediately had to cancel that. But look, I've spent all my life working in charities and community groups and campaign groups, and often without money and resources. And if there's one thing I know how to do, it's to innovate and just deal with the reality that's in front of you, and not sit there kind of licking your wounds. So what I did is immediately set about rescuing the situation, I suppose, and organised an online launch, live stream through Facebook and also through Zoom, and I'd end up with thousands of people watching us, and I'd guest speakers and musicians, and it was a huge success. And then I did a whole campaign online, but I also got radio play, I got national interviews and press reviews and all the traditional stuff. But it has been massively challenging. Like the first 3 months the book came out, the shops were all closed. Now people obviously were able to buy it online and have continued to do so. But thankfully I had a big community of people that were interested in the book and supportive of the book. And I think just the combined actions brought us to number 1 in the bestsellers. And I'm hugely grateful for that. And I do strongly believe a lot of that to do with the power of community and people rallying behind something and somebody. And I think on the one hand, yes, absolutely, it was a disastrous time launch a book, but on the other hand, it's a perfect time because it's actually a book about hope during turbulent times, and it really tells the story of me at a time in my life feeling a bit lost. I'd overworked. I'd set up a national charity. I built it up over many years with friends and colleagues, and really I burnt myself out into a place where I wasn't in the best of health, and I needed a change. And at that point, the Celtic Tiger had collapsed and crashed, and the country was in disarray, and in some ways not dissimilar to where we're at the moment or heading. And I set about going around Ireland interviewing people on the question of hope, and I decided to do so through the methodology of hitchhiking, which obviously is something I maybe wouldn't have had it, or most people haven't done in a long time, but I grew up around Cavan, as many people did, hitchhiking here and there, you know, and I suppose it was a kind of an adventure for me, like at a, you know, I'm in my early 40s, well at that stage I was in my 30s, but it's just a curiosity of adventure and see what happened, and really it opened up this whole universe for me where it revealed that Irish spirit that we know so well, that community, kindness, connection, people wanting to help each other out, people wanting to tell stories, exchange stories, tell you about the hard times they might be going through, but also how they get through the hard times. So the book is twofold about Ireland and our culture and our community and our history, and it's also about my own journey, but really it's about hope, you know, and how do we cultivate hope when things are up against us, and how we ultimately cultivate hope is through action. And I'm a great believer in action, is that we don't, I mean, on the one hand, yes, it's important to sit still and meditate and contemplate and pray or do whatever you need to do to be silent and still, but we also need to create hope through our actions, through helping the neighbour, through painting a picture or singing a song, or, you know, we shouldn't be idle in the same way that you're not idle running your radio station and your shows. And I'm a great believer that we should always, you know, keep the positive side out and try and create something good in the world.
Indeed so. And in doing the book and all that, I mean, you got praise from the likes of people like Christy Moore, Francis Black.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very fortunate that I would have met Francis now. So a lot of my background would have been around working with young people and also health promotion campaigns around mental health, physical health, sexual health. But alcohol emerged as a theme within some of that work. And Ireland is a great country for drinking, and there can be lots of crack in that, there's no doubt. But there can be lots of problems in it as well. And through some of my campaigning around alcohol awareness, I would have come across Christy Moore and Francis Black, who each have been public about their own troubles in that area, and courageously so, in my view, because certainly there isn't a family in Ireland isn't affected through alcohol misuse and abuse, you know. But it's not to go judging or shaming anyone, it's just to create a conversation. So I would have met them over the years, and then obviously a big fan of their music and their politics and their interest in social justice. And then a few years ago, I set up a podcast. It's called the Love and Courage Podcast, and I get to interview phenomenal people. So they were both guests on the podcast, and so I was in touch with them through a few different ways. And when the book was coming out, my publisher asked me to send the book around to different people I know and see what they thought of it. So they were a few of the people that sent it to, and thank God they liked it, and they sent me in some praise on it. And you know, it was a nervous time when you're putting something out. You don't know if it's any good or people like it and that kind of thing. So I'm very grateful for their support.
Indeed, no, that's absolutely superb. And you were doing like various presentations, you know, to people in New York and all that sort of thing online.
Yeah, that's another thing I've been at. So I look, there's no doubt in the hard times we're in and the challenges and the restrictions of movement as well. And I was meant to be in the UK and going around Ireland. I was meant to be in the US last summer, and none of those things were possible. But at the same time, you know, the internet is such an amazing tool. Even people listening to this will know, like, the world is our oyster. We can connect with each other. We can exchange music, ideas, conversation, and often at little or no cost. And so I decided to just take that on and really bring the book to the world if I couldn't go to the world. So, you know, I basically have set up a series of online events and have been partnering with groups around the world. But a lot of them would be Irish diaspora groups. So two of the groups I've done events with now have been the Irish American Heritage Museum in the US and the New York Irish Centre. And I'm in discussions now with groups in Australia and in London, in Indonesia and a few other places. So the whole thing is a 1 hour event that I do. It's really about 25 minutes where I give a conversation about the book and the themes in the book, do a little bit of reading from the book, and then we just open it up into a Q&A kind of conversation where anyone dialing in, it's free to attend. They can just fire in a question and I'll answer it if I can. And it's really just a week community gathering, and hopefully leaves people feeling a bit more uplifted and inspired when they so it's also about promoting my book, Hitching for Hope, but it doesn't need to be about just the book. It's really another opportunity for bringing people together at this time.
Indeed, that's absolutely excellent. Now, your work has been recognised. You were actually appointed to Council of State by President of Ireland, Michael D. Higgins, and you served a 7-year term.
I did indeed. That was a huge honour now, I have to say. That was from 2012 to 2019. And so the Council of State, for anyone that maybe not that familiar with it, is it's an advisory body to the President. Most of the members are what are called ex officio appointees. There would be the President himself, the Taoiseach, the Taoiseach, but then also all the former presidents and former Taoiseach or Taoiseach, and people like the Attorney General. So it's really the I suppose you could say the establishment are very much rooted in it, and it's to offer specifically advice to the President if he or she convenes a meeting with regard to a piece of legislation that they want advice on before signing or sending to the Supreme Court. So it's a kind of a technical enough remit, and I suppose the President gets to appoint 7 appointees to this body that roughly has about 20-21 people, and I was one of the 7, and I was probably the youngest at the time as well, and it was an amazing honour. And I suppose our President, Michael D. Higgins, has always had a very strong view around community engagement and different voices and diversity, and I suppose that he probably came across me in that work that I was doing in the community, and it was just a phenomenal honour. I was there when the 1916 commemorations were happening, so I got invited to all these different events and commemorations, and it was a real insight into official Ireland in that regard, and just a huge privilege, a learning opportunity, but also just keep my feet on the ground anyway. If people thought I was maybe getting a big wage or a pension from it or anything, but it's an unpaid role, it's an honorary role really, and my work still is very much kind of rooted in the day-to-day kind of community world as well, so it wouldn't be political in the big P of politics, if you know what I mean.
Right, well done on all of that, Ruairí. Now, you're also a Fulbright scholar, and you're mentioning community organisations you're involved in. You were a founder of the pioneering spunout.ie youth organisation, a founding member of the Uplift organisation, and you're also part of the founding team behind Gaelic Voices for Change. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, Spun Out, first of all, it was an online, well, it still is, it still exists, and it's going great, actually, I left it many years ago, but it's still going very, very strong, and it used the internet to support and engage young people nationally, and essentially it's a national youth website, and then Uplift is, I was only one of the founding team in that, but it is an amazing organisation that brings together hundreds of thousands of people actually throughout Ireland to use the internet to mobilise them on issues in their local community or issues nationally in a kind of non-political way also, where it's a kind of civic action force where people can sign petitions and get their voices heard on issues that matter to them. And then finally the other one would be Gaelic Voices for Change. I was doing work with the Gaelic Players Association, who are the representative body for inter-county football and hurling players, the males that is. The female groups have the WGPA and the others, but really it was about social engagement, social action for the footballers and hurlers, and worked with them to take action on homelessness, which remains sadly one of the blights in this country. at such a time where, you know, we might be struggling, but there's still plenty of money floating around. And it's been an absolute shame over the last 10 years to see the economy doing well again, and just homelessness continue to rise and rise and rise. It really sickens me, to be honest with you. And I'm not alone in that regard. And amongst those were, you know, these local heroes, I suppose, in their counties playing for their county teams, and we worked together to kind of create more awareness on these issues and more action. And we did a sleep out in 14 different towns and cities around Ireland, and also in New York and in Quebec in Canada. And we raised €250,000 in a week, really. So that was a great project to be involved in as well. So I'm always kind of just, you know, seeing what I can do and trying to light a few fires here and there. Not literally, but, you know, just keep things moving along.
Well done. That's absolutely excellent. And I do know that the homeless situation in Ireland is something that's indeed very controversial, and a lot of people are not happy at all about it. And it really is tragic, absolutely tragic in any country, you know, to have homelessness on that level. And well done to yourself on, you know, and being part of a movement in order to try and help with all of that. Ruairí, tell me, where can people find out information about you? You're on the usual social medias, and you've also got your own website.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I'm Ruairi McKiernan. You'll find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Jesus, there's so many of them these days, isn't there? And then the podcast is the Love and Courage podcast. It's on all the main podcast apps. And then the book is Hitching for Hope, A Journey into the Heart and Soul of Ireland. And you'll find that at hitchingforhope.com. And it's on Book Depository, Amazon, WHitsmith, all the various bookshops, book websites. And people can contact me anytime, also info@hitchingforhope.com.
That's excellent. Ruairí, listen, it's been fascinating to talk to you, I must say. And listen, I wish you all the success, continued success in the world. And, you know, as I always say, you know, stay safe and stay well, and we'll all come out the other side.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it, Jerry. Best of luck with all your great work.